Welcome, everyone. Obviously, big day here in the Florida House and Florida Senate, opening day of the legislative session. You've heard from myself, you've heard from Senate President Simpson and Governor DeSantis. We got to talk about what we wanted to talk about today. So with that, I'll see what you all want to talk about.
What are your big healthcare priorities for this session?
Yeah. Look, Chair Burton's doing a great job looking at the healthcare priorities. Obviously, we care about Medicaid managed care and the status there, so they're working on some stuff. We care about continuing innovation on how to lower costs for patients. I think that Christine Sexton read an article about our data transparency bill about the healthcare pricing. We want to make sure that that's getting out there, that people are using it to try to get folks to start thinking about the cost of healthcare. System isn't designed for people to think about that, and that's a priority for the House.
Is there a concern with how easily the Omicron variant of COVID can spread, that there might be people or lawmakers out, hordes of lawmakers out at a time?
Look, the University of Florida says we can expect the peak now in the next week or so. No question that this strain has been probably the most contagious of all of them. It feels like almost everybody's getting this at some point. The good news is we're not seeing the hospitalizations go up. We're not seeing people getting super sick like we had in some of these other variants where there was real challenges. I think that's probably a combination of a number of things. I'm not a scientist, but probably has to do with people are vaccinated. Has to do with the fact that people, this strain seems to be a weaker strain of the virus. So as a result of that, we govern ourselves accordingly. Look, each one of these things has been different. And I think that there's this sort of desire on people's part to treat moments in time like they're the same throughout. And that's not true. The Omicron virus is not like the Delta virus. It is different. And we're seeing the reaction of people being different in the community. So we're taking an approach based on the information at the time.
Just to expand a little bit on that,
Yeah.
if you could, are you advising members to isolate for 5 days?
Yeah, look, if a member test is positive, we tell them don't come.
Right,
Right?
don't come.
If you feel sick, go. If you feel sick, get a test before you come back to work and you're around your colleagues. If you don't feel sick, then we'd love to see
I
you.
don't think state healthcare workers are getting the same benefit. I think they're having some problems with telecommuting when they test positive. Is that something that you guys are concerned about or that you'll look into?
I have not heard that.
Can you talk a little bit big picture, because I know you don't want to get into the details on redistricting, but what is the Senate's moving really fast with its maps.
Yeah.
What's your schedule? And then secondly, really the more important big picture question is, as there's litigation before the U.S. Supreme Court,
Yeah.
do you intend that you will hold out to see if there's any resolution from the Supreme Court of the United States on things like the Voting Rights Act before you complete your work?
The only reflection of our timeline is math. Senate has 40 districts. We have 120. Naturally, that's a little more complicated to do. We're happy our friends in the Senate are moving at their pace. We're probably going to be a week or so behind as a result of the fact that we have more districts. We got more maps to draw. I think that Chair Leak and the redistricting team are doing a good job of moving the process along, and it'll continue.
Can you talk a little bit?
U.S. Supreme Court decisions on.
We're not basing at this point anything on the Supreme Court.
Can you talk a little bit more about your Medicaid managed care priorities? Just say a little bit more about exactly what you want to do there.
Yeah, look, it's more of just a global conversation. I mean, the House, obviously, the Medicaid managed care originated in the Florida House, right? That was a product of the House before I got here. But I think that what you found is that we are a believer that while no system is perfect, and certainly managed care is not perfect, it has done a good job of trying to treat the patient holistically, but also, not eating the entire state budget. I mean, one of the things we talk about a lot of the time is, you take away, I said it today, right? You take away from one thing, that means $1 has to come from somewhere else. So we were getting to a place where the Medicaid budget was eating the entire state budget. I mean, there comes a point at which you got no choice but to cut K-12 education or early learning or things nobody wants to cut as a result of that. So where I think that I've got lots of praise for the legislators who came before us that was a really hard thing to do. I thought they did a really good job of trying to tackle a tough problem. Now we have to be stewards of that, make sure that it's working, make sure we're making the improvements as we go, but also no desire to get back to where we were.
What about dental?
Departments have to investigate murders. Is that something you support? I mean, is it? And when do you see that bill being?
I don't have a problem with people investigating elections. I mean, the one thing where I think the governor certainly has a point on the election front is there's nobody's job to do that, right? So you might have a detective who works economic crimes or homicide or robbery, but I doubt you have a elections detective. And I'm not sure that you need it structured any particular way, but I do think that having a level of expertise on how you navigate things is something helpful, right? So a lot of times, for example, police departments or state attorney's office will have elder fraud departments. Well, why elder fraud and not something else? Because it's complicated, right? You had somebody who may have voluntarily signed something, but maybe didn't know what they were signing, right? So that takes a level of sophistication that's required, and I think the governor's concerned that there's not that level of sophistication out there of people who are working these kinds of cases. So we're gonna look at it, we'll evaluate it, and see what happens.
Some of the people in the Senate have been a little.
Well, I stand by what I said, right? We'll take a look at it. The Senate's got their process, we have our process. Sure. Look, I think one of the things that we haven't done a good job, and I think this is just more of a broader answer to your question about state employees, right, is we haven't kept up with inflation, right? If you run the numbers on inflation, we're behind. Even this is before the new Biden inflation, right? This is before that. So I think that we have to take a realistic viewpoint and realize that we have a lot of state workers who haven't kept up with inflation of their salaries, and we need to address it. So how we do that, or how much, or how fast, is all something that's going to have to be worked out during the budget process. But I share President Simpson's commitment to working on it.
What's your biggest priority right now, Speaker Sprowls,
Yeah.
in terms of all the different legislative priorities you have right now? What's the top one?
Well, it's like if you told me which my favorite children. I can't pick that. I never have. Look, this is a big state, and I think that we do a disservice to the people of Florida when we say this is the #1 priority. I know people have done that in the past, and I don't judge that style. It's just not my style. Christine?
Can you talk a little bit about your data privacy? I heard the governor say today that he supported it, but a year ago he said that.
Yeah.
And I know there was disagreement over civil enforcement in the bill.
Sure.
And last year you chose to let the bill die instead of passing it without civil enforcement.
Yeah.
So where,
Well, look,
we know?
I think I've certainly been clear, and I think Representative McFarland's been clear on it. What we don't want to do is pass a bill that makes it seem like people's data is protected when it's not, right? Like, nobody wants to do that. I'm not doing that. The reason we didn't do the bill last year is it seems like some of the ideas that were floating out there, in our view, didn't have the kind of teeth, regardless of how you craft that, didn't have the kind of teeth to make it seem like we were really doing something for Floridians. I want to protect people's data privacy. The House has rolled out the bill that we had last year, which is very aggressive to do that. There's a lot, I think, of misinformation that is being put out there on the bill about people say, well, if I just share it with somebody who works for me, my marketing team, I will get sued. That's not true. That's not true. What is true is if you sell it to someone else for a pecuniary gain, you get in trouble for that, right? Because, and nobody will admit, by the way, I haven't had one person admit to me that they've actually sold people's data, and yet we know it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry. So, but apparently nobody's doing it because nobody will at least admit to it. So we think that the information out there that's being put out on our bill is totally false. I think Representative McFarland does an awesome job at laying that out there, but it's also hard to fight shadows, right? People who won't actually say what it is they are trying to do. So we're going to continue to fight for it. I think certainly we have agreement with the governor. I talked about big tech and some of the big tech companies. Obviously, we want to get to them too. So we'll have that conversation and see where we end up.
when you say you have agreement with the governor, hold on.
You mentioned cybersecurity.
Yeah.
In your speech. What do you have in mind there? I know that that office has had some
Yeah.
troubles, but
Yeah. Look, a lot. I mean, we're Florida. We are a huge target for everybody. Your low-level hacker, your 14-year-old who wants to hack and hold a local city or local city government hostage to get money. Hackers from foreign countries. We know that they're trying to infiltrate. Where I live in Pinellas County, I think it was maybe a little over a year ago, somebody hacked in to the city of Oldsmar's water supply, took over their water supply. That includes changing chemical compositions, right? Like, this is something that we expect to read in like an Ian Fleming spy novel. We don't expect this to really happen to our water supply. And yet, in a city this is not a podunk town. This is a real city in Pinellas County, which is a very metropolitan area. And yet, our water supply was pretty easily hacked. And it could have been avoided. And it could have been avoided without too much effort on our part. So what I want to see is a comprehensive upgrade of our state's cybersecurity infrastructure. but realizing that beyond just our state government, there are local governments, local municipalities, local agencies who have sensitive information, sensitive data, water supply. We want to make sure that we are doing our part to help them, realizing that they have different budgets than we do, and we want there to be institutions like Cyber Florida at the University of South Florida who is able to help them be educated on the things that they can do to protect from this kind of hacking, the theft of taxpayer dollars, the theft of intellectual property. It's a real issue, and we intend to make a go of it this year.
Can I ask you about the affordable housing?
I have no thoughts on medical marijuana.
Affordable housing.
Don't want recreational, how about that? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Affordable housing, there's a public employee bill that.
I'm so glad you asked. Look at you. You
you're
read the press
highlighting.
release and everything.
Yeah, I
Huh?
read the press release.
Thank you for asking.
What would you like to see done with that?
Thank you for asking. Somebody asked about our bills. Look at that. You get the award today.
Go ahead.
Look, this is, we talk about affordable housing. There was a question about, our state employees. This is a bill that mixes those two things, right? Every community needs teachers. Every community needs police officers. Every community needs firefighters, child protection investigators. We pride ourselves with being the most veteran-friendly state in America. All of those people are included in House Bill 1. It was House Bill 1 for a reason. Because those people are our priority to make sure that they have an additional $50,000 homestead exemption. So it's a constitutional amendment that we'll put on the ballot. But it's one that I'm very confident that the voters will support. These are individuals that we need and we count on. And I think it's a way for us to get at really two things. One, valuing those people, allowing them to keep more money in their own pocketbook. And also encouraging them to come to the state of Florida to teach and to protect our community.
That's
So,
a
Individual freedom bill, which is
That's a
go
ballot.
ahead, you can get one.
the critical race theory bill, I
Yeah.
guess is what some would call it. How would that affect diversity, inclusion, equity training, and the teaching of slavery, considering,
Yeah.
Inherently that's a conversation that not many people love to talk about, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to their ancestry. It makes people uncomfortable. How would that affect?
I don't think that last part's true at all. I think that you find the teaching of slavery in every class or every grade that it's appropriate in the state of Florida, and we would all expect that. We'd all be outraged if our classes weren't educating people about atrocities like slavery or the Holocaust. But if you read our bill, I would ask this question to all of you. If you read our bill and you look at the list of principles that are in that bill that lay out you shouldn't treat people different because of their race. You shouldn't make people feel a certain way because of their race. We should treat those people equally. If you look at those principles, I would ask this question: which one would you object to? And I'd ask anybody who has an issue with our bill, which one of the principles that are outlined in our bill do you find problematic? I think that person's going to be reluctant to say that there's anything in there that they find objectionable, because it's actually what I believe to be our shared views of Floridians.